Ablaze Chapter 3, May 1943. How many times Ethan Neal stood in the doorway of the prison cell. Yes, Flag 4C was all a prison. But the letters found in David Sterling's possessions had told Eggers exactly what the German army needed to know. That the Algerian independence movement, funded by the Nazis, was being channeled into de Gaulle's coffers. Like the Irish Republicans under Tommy, the Algerian independence movement was operating behind the scenes, using Nazi gold to undermine the allegiance between the Free French Army and the French resistance. Gold helped. Gold, and propaganda. Her other brother, was expert at this. Ethan closed her eyes and thought momentarily of Michael. What would he think of her? She was the brat. And then he had loved her. And she him? Perhaps. The Republican movement had been the only thing which had given her a place, given her a purpose, belonging. And now Ethan shook her head. As Josephine, she could do nothing as Ethan Coyle reborn. She could drive a wedge into the workings of the system, behaving in such a way that even the ideologically bent Germans questioned her fervor, her soul-wrenching anti-Britishness. About that, they were both agreed. And Josephine, her promise to Bill Sterling deepest of all, crafted that person to act as Ethan did. Her position was easy to come by, a friend of Bill's, with a contact in Moussy, with a contact in the Seekostdienst, the SD, the intelligence service, which led an inebriated Ethan Neal across the southwest of France, loudly proclaiming her hatred of Britain, waiting for a head clever, professionally ambitious German to decide she was exactly what was needed. Moussy, then to Strasbourg, and into the sphere of Heydrich's operation, under Walter Sellenberg. She had stolen money to head west, and stood almost naked at his office door, feigning far inebriation, purporting to have followed him from the bar in Nuremberg back to his lodgings. He had laughed at the poor Irish mouse and brought her inside, proud of his honourable actions by clothing her and listening to her ramblings of hatred to Britain, and telling of her vow to kill all British men. Underground work done, and the preceding of Ethan's reputation had meant that a jewel, hard but brilliant, had turned up in his hand. Sellenberg could only suggest one thing: Flag 4C, and into the unlikely sphere of another man, for Ethan Neal was not the only fervent Republican the Nazis had at Colditz. Which county? The voice was warm, like honey, and reminded her of hazy, bright days, of summer sun with her mother. The man had had a hunched look, as if he had spent too many days indoors. However, this did not diminish his beauty, and could have been mistaken for a model of Aryan masculinity had he not spoken. I'm of Mayo, Josephine told him, aware that Eggers and Prum flanked her left and right shoulders, exaggerating her birth accent enough. Did Hewitt, are made in. And his smile was everything, making Josephine nearly forget herself. Nearly. And she listened as John Francis O'Reilly, having stepped off Jersey and into the pay of Goebbels, had been paid to broadcast messages in the Irish language, propaganda across the waves and strengthen Irish resistance. She didn't know if he looked more astonished when Ethan told him she had handled weapons for the Republicans or when O'Reilly had disclosed his work with her brother. Prum and Eggers had not left their side in the interview room near the kitchens at Colditz, and Ethan Neal had been astounded to discover the information Bill Sterling had primed Josephine with before she reluctantly left his side. William Joyce was in Berlin too, broadcasting anti-British propaganda messages. You've a broken bar met him? Ethan stammered, Josephine acting as carefully as she dared. Is he a broken bar? Well, he spoke fondly of you. O'Reilly smirked. And your time with Mosley? No whore am I. Ethan shot back, angry and ferocious. She threw the table away from her and stalked away from O'Reilly, arms folded, then shot back the words in Irish, too quickly for either Eggers or Prum to catch, even if they had understood. Speak English, girl, Prum chided, and found that a blade was at his throat, for Ethan had rounded on him. Then, she backed away, the effect hitting the mark. She was a temper-high, unpredictable, Irish-speaking, Britain-hating violent woman, who had got the better of a decorated captain in charge of one of the most notorious prisons in Germany. I would meet my brother, Ethan told them. It wasn't a request. First, You work here. Get the information we need. Then, Berlin. When she had left with Heydrich Eggers, Prom and O'Reilly alone in the office, the captain of Colditz turned to the Irishman who had so casually sauntered into Germany. Do you trust her? O'Reilly cast his eye in her wake. I firmly believe in her will. She hates Britain more than even Tone himself. Whatever they did to her, they have awoken a psyche. She, a fairy demon of old. She will never let go of her hatred. Indeed, thought Perham. And Sellenberg should be told of this. O'Reilly stooped as he left to scoop up the pin he had seen sparkling in the gaslight from its place on the floor. She dropped this, he thought, respectful of the commitment one so young had shown to the effort of ousting the British from Ireland, in contrast to his own self. He pocketed the round shield of ancient design, interlocking patterns with stained animals, circular, as of wont to hold the cloak of a chieftain. On the back was a craft-worked mark, Dublin. Cuman Nemban. His mind drifted back to his own Republican involvement, on the coast of County Clare. Had they ever met? He would ask her. Beautiful, deadly, and entirely committed to Irish republicanism. O'Reilly folded his hand around the brooch. She was exactly the right person to extract what the SD needed from David Sterling. 88,888,888. Francis Stewart. And so she did. Meeting after meeting with Bill's brother, careful to exaggerate her Irish accent and emphasize her loathing of all things British. The Germans had been true to their word and allowed Ethan and O'Reilly to travel together to Berlin where all radio transmissions were broadcast, Rundfunkhaus, in the smart area of Berlin called Charlottenburg. What did you do to your face? Ethan asked, when they were alone, or alone as they were ever going to get within the Erland redaction offices. SD officers stood guard outside and the door was propped open with a hard-backed wooden chair. What did you do to your name? Thathan Coil Agam. William Joyce smirked, his scar twisting across his cheekbone. Then we are one purpose at last, he replied, in Irish. You fight for Michael, I fight for myself. I fight for myself, Josephine told her. Ever since Mama left me at Newtown it's a broken bar. Her voice trailed off. The most truthful of anything she had ever uttered in Germany. Josephine swallowed, forcing her mind back to her persona. We both hate Britain, she added, that acquisitive bastard nation. She lowered her voice. Why did Mama leave me there? The mother used to beat me for being bad. And were you bad? Her brother asked. No more than some children. But worse because she hit me. Josephine did not mention Mosley, and her time in London, that the beef leader would beat her too. William Joyce should get his comeuppance for this. But, for now, Josephine's presence, her role in everything, depended on her maintaining a network of contacts. She dashed all thoughts away, and looked at her quarry. Sterling, his back to the wall, looked in her direction, defiance and outrage on his face. Josephine, as Ethan, stood firm. Eve Mansour, though on the face of it an ally of Great Britain, was, to the greater extent, a fighter for independence. This amused Ethan, for she hated the woman, hated her sophistication, hated her effortless grace and Atilda copyright land, her charisma, her sex appeal. Ethan had power, and was using it to destroy Bill Sterling's little brother. How many times Sterling talked, eventually, when she had given him the letters. Irrefutable proof that the woman was only speaking to the rogue heroes because it furthered independence of Algeria. Mansour cared not about Germany, nor even the millions of disappeared in Europe. France was in a position to be exploited, and boy was it being exploited. She was first at the club, into the bed-broken bar. Words. His words. Ones which Ethan cared nothing for. Instead she pictured Bill, his brother, earnest face covered in pan stick, remnants of wig glued behind his ears. Hugh Dalton had never exploited him as she might have done, as her other brother had taught her to with Mosley. Dalton had freed her from her exploitation, taken her away from the abuse and the beatings. It had toughened her, and now she had gone rogue herself, burying herself in her work, not caring whether she was right or not. Her brother, her other brother, was her one weakness, the person who had cared about her when no one else had. Josephine spat on the floor as David Sterling's spirit was crushed. She shook her head, and remembered Dalton's face as he introduced her to the man who would train her for the Special Operations Executive, Brigadier Dudley Rangel Clark. Hugh Dalton has laughed. He acted as if doing this was not forcing her to perform some sort of role in exchange for not being hanged for Irish Republican rebellion, but rather, doing her a huge, exciting favor. Induce the enemy to do something, not just to think something, Clark had told her, his grin at the jape of the whole so caper never leaving his face. All men are motivated by knowledge, and power. Or, knowledge for power. And for sex, of course. He looked her up and down, which is another kind of power. He handed her the code book that Josephine was to use to contact the handle with the field radio that she could now assemble with her eyes closed, to simulate a night mission. Never conduct a deception without any clear objective, Clark continued, looking over Josephine again. Any proper deception plan must have time to work, so strategize early and put multiple points into place, in case one doesn't come off. As for military deception, do what you can. You know a broken bar? He looked her up and down. Sterling won't talk unless he is broken. Then, Ethan lingered by the door. The shock from the unassailable evidence that Eve Mansoura was not who she claimed to be washed between them as unspoken words. "Die tar 1/4 hour. Absklesen," Ethan shouted, and then, when the steel grated through the lock, she moved closer to him. One step closer. "You have to be unclothed, naked, vulnerable. Tell him everything, and together you can craft a persona, a new life. Get away from your brother." Clark leaned towards Josephine as if to test out that part of his instruction beforehand. However, he caught her eye and remembered she had killed men who were loyal to the British Crown on behalf of the Irish Republicans, and thought better of it. Now, in Colditz Castle, Ethan watched the man fight the descent into rejection, and, for the first time, felt sorry for him. She had, of course, been in his home as Bill had trained her, walked the castle passages, sat in rooms where he, as a boy, must have played. "Why you?" David's words were quieter now, and Ethan only just caught them. She stepped forward, closing the door, unlocked, behind her. "What?" He turned his head, anger and scorn replaced with confusion. He was questioning her right, the validity of her position. "Stand firm, girl," Ethan told Josephine. "Why you? Who would come here to tell me this? What prosperity will Germany bring to Ireland, do you suppose?" "Scotland too," Ethan conceded. For Sean McBride was in contact with the nationalists in that country too, and the disparate yet determined few in Wales. "When Britain is destroyed, loyalty will be repaid." David Sterling laughed, hollowly. "There is no loyalty that will ever be repaid. Your deception will be uncovered." "The Irish Republican Army, yes, like O'Reilly, some slight done to you, so you turned to some idealism of ancient myth." He waved a hand. "It is nothing but smoke and mirrors. Like your own family, replete with money on the backs of African slaves in Jamaica. How does this make you any different to me? Except your family's exploits agreed with those of the English crown. They did not always." From his seated position by the door, David Sterling looked questioning. "The Bonnie Prince, and that your family name is Sterling?" William Wallace's head was in a spike on London Bridge for his rebellion against Edward I. "All those English dead to keep Scotland Scottish. Who are you to say Ireland should not have the same?" A twinge, just a glimmer of sympathy in his eyes. "Go on," urged Josephine of Ethan, "tell him a broken bar. Tell him about your brother. A broken bar. There's a difference, clearly." No, not that brother. Your other brother, the one who went to America. The one who came back brimming with ideas and ended up shoulder to shoulder with the former MP for Smethwick. You will evoke his sympathy. What is the difference but in strength? Ethan continued. How is the will of one people different to another? Ireland would be free and stand as a proud nation once again. The will was the same in Germany and might came to them. Why should nationalists not take advantage where they can? She could not yet. Robbie was too far sealed away in her heart. You take advantage, to aid escapes. Do you not wish to escape yourself back to the Highlands? The key to deception, Dudley Clark had once told her, was not to make your enemy think what you wish but to get them to do what you want. She had planted the thought, but she had also tormented him over even Mansour. It was a seed that needed to germinate over a longer period than just one night. You know a lot about my home. Was her enemy getting her to do what they wanted? She had traded her freedom for the cause, after all. So, who was her enemy? Josephine felt Ethan's voice lower. You are an HS, aren't you? It had the effect she wanted. Shock was betrayed behind the man's eyes where Ethan had only ever witnessed ice-cold control. What an extraordinary thing to say. Why do you say that? Taught speech, taught composure in all things. But Josephine, it was too late. Josephine had seen the effect her words had caused. Because of my brother. Her tone was loud enough to be heard outside. My other brother, and whispered the other. Robbie, not William. David Sterling held her gaze for a little longer than necessary, and then remained speechless longer still when she held out her hand, palm flat, with a small object on it. A small polished stone with the end chipped off. David Sterling looked at her hand, then back to Josephine's face. She moved her hand, gesturing for him to take it. And yours, she whispered, keeping her eyes fixed on him as he inspected her hand. From Bill. 888,888,888. Who is the man who the Germans would speak to in Ireland? Think. Think carefully, Josephine. What do you want the Germans to do? To be interested in the Irish cause? It was night time, 21 months before her confession to Sterling at Colditz, and she had just parted from Henry Druce, who had, under his guise, sabotaged the main route between Strasbourg and Paris. Josephine had assembled the radio, and from their base that clear summer's night, some sheltered rocks in the mountains of Vosges. No, that's what you want, she told herself, as she morsed the message of success to the resistance personnel based in the east. What do they want? To use Ireland to attack Great Britain. Yes, yes, good girl, you're getting there. So, how do you make them do what you want? A broken bar. She had suffered at the hands of the British, and was carrying out a highly trusted mission as, in effect, a mercenary. Get them to communicate with someone who can allow German troops to land in Ireland. A broken bar. Butte. A broken bar. That would be Valera. Broken bar. I don't know Valera. Butte. A broken bar. You know someone who does. Be her, Josephine. Ethan Coyle, who wants to resign the Canaan ban, because of the destruction. In Ethan's world, German troops landing in Ireland would limit the Irish Republican Army's campaign in the north, prevent the deaths of women and children. Feet trod the ground. She looked up. Druce grinned, his arms holding a milk churn. Pushing the radio to one side, noting she must disassemble it properly, she grinned back. Warm milk, fast taken from the cow. It could no longer be night if the dairyman was milking. She took up 2 tin cups and her fellow sabotage operative poured out some of the milk from the churn. Goat, Ethan commented. Goat, Henry agreed. And they watched the sunrise together for a short moment before he took up the churn, opened the lid and refilled it to approximately the same volume as they had drunk. He would return it momentarily. Leave no trace. A broken bar. Yes, Butte. A broken bar. I would need papers, names. Contacts. A broken bar. I will be that contact. Dudley Clark replied, in Irish. I will ensure people are contacted. But you have a second string to your bow. As well as being Ethan, your brother is very effectively demolishing the hope of Britain. Go to him. Tell him you caught up with him, flatter him, if necessary. You need him to know of your cause and the hatred you have of the Protestants, and your cause. Then, the Nazis he serves can triangulate with my deception. We can get you as far as Augsburg. To Nuremberg, you're on your own. He looked her up and down. How's your German? German? Very good. I will look into that. But not being excellent will play to your role. Clark smiled warmly. That you got out of the locked cell was jolly good work. Josephine would need it. Mansour almost got her drowned when she was in Paris, such was the Algerians' fervor for her own cause. It had made Josephine hate her from her salon-perfect locks to her perfectly manicured nails. How she wished she could have witnessed her terror as the plane went down, and told her why. In the solitary confinement cell at Colditz, the table broke, glass smashed. It disguised the precisely chosen, efficiently delivered words Josephine was conveying to David Sterling. Leaving after 10 minutes, guards unbolting the door to come to her aid, the self-inflicted cut to her forehead adding to the effect. There was a look between them. The seed had taken. He did not trust her, nor would Josephine in his position, and probably never would. But she had conveyed enough for David Sterling to understand. She watched him turn the volcanic rock, a souvenir from Edinburgh Castle, knocked into a point in order to deface his brother Bill's wooden cigar case as a rebellious child, and knew it had begun. "It's something you will never learn, treacherous bitch," he screamed at her, for the effect, throwing a leg from the chair he had destroyed to cover their talking in their direction. One of the guards thumped him in the stomach as the other hit him over the head with his baton. He understood Mansoura's treachery, something she had known even as far back as her association with Druce in the field, in France. And, of course, Josephine had used the keyword, Paddy Mayne. They could work together.